Some stories don't need blood or ghosts to make you tremble. Sometimes all it takes is a familiar voice calling out in the dark, a glance that shouldn't exist, or a stranger standing in the wrong place, at exactly the wrong time, and suddenly you're wide awake for the rest of the night. In today's video, I'll share with you 5 true stories told by the very people who lived through them. Each one is a raw glimpse into real fear. The kind of fear that any of us might face if we ever find ourselves in the wrong moment. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to enter moments you won't easily forget. Story 1. The woman at the end of the hallway. I used to live alone in a small basement apartment beneath an old 2-story house. It was the early days after I'd moved out of my parents' place, a time of new independence, quiet uncertainty, and sometimes a strange kind of loneliness. The apartment had 1 bedroom, a small living room, and a tiny kitchen that opened into a hallway. Most nights after classes and working part-time, I'd relax by watching movies, usually horror films. There was something about that genre that made me feel more alive, even if it meant sleeping with the nightlight on. That night was no different. I just finished watching a film about a woman who broke into someone's home, quiet, unsettling, haunting. I turned off the TV, and as the screen went black, I realized the apartment had gone too quiet. Then came the softest sounds, wood creaking like faint footsteps. But I knew for a fact no one was home upstairs. The landlord was away on a business trip. His car wasn't in the driveway. So, who was moving above me? I couldn't stay still. My heart was pounding. My palms were damp. I opened the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, a narrow passage leading to the living room and kitchen. And then I froze. At the end of the hallway, lit only by a sliver of moonlight through the window, someone was standing there. It was a woman, tall, with long dripping hair as if she'd just come in from the rain. One shoulder of her shirt was torn, revealing pale, almost gray skin. She didn't move. She just stared straight at me. No words, no blinking. Then, just like a scene from the movie I just watched, she began to step backward. Slowly. Her eyes locked on mine the entire time, until she disappeared behind the kitchen door. I nearly screamed. My hands trembled as I slammed the bedroom door shut, locked it, and backed into the far corner like a terrified child. The tiny apartment suddenly felt massive, empty, cold. I sat like that for over 10 minutes, too afraid to check my phone, too afraid to make a sound. There were no knocks, no footsteps, nothing. Eventually, I pulled myself together and stepped out. I checked the entire apartment, every corner, every closet, even the bathroom. No one was there. But when I looked back toward the hallway, I saw something that made me gag. Wet footprints, smudged on the wooden floor. They started in the kitchen and ended right beside my bed. The next morning I called my landlord. After a long pause, he said quietly, "I'll call the guy who rents the unit upstairs." Later, he told me what he'd found out. The woman was his tenant's ex-girlfriend. She'd been diagnosed with a psychological disorder. They had broken up long ago, but somehow she found the address and broke into the wrong apartment. The landlord apologized. So did the guy upstairs. But no one could explain how she got in. My door had been locked. There were no signs of forced entry. That night I didn't sleep at home. I stayed with a friend. And since then, I've stopped watching horror movies. Because sometimes the thing you fear on screen might be standing right at the end of your hallway. Story 2. Kathy, the ghost in her own home. My father is a good man. After my mother passed, he became quiet, withdrawn, until he met Kathy. She showed up with an unnaturally wide smile, eyes that never blinked, and a voice so sweet it made you feel sick. I'm the eldest son in the house, and I warned my father the first time I saw her. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't selfishness. It was something about her, something that chilled me to the bone even before I had proof. But then, the proof came. One afternoon, I caught Kathy standing in Dad's closet where he kept his safe and other important belongings. When I looked in, she turned her head slowly and smiled. Is something wrong? Sweetheart, I told Dad. He just gave a tired laugh. Maybe she was looking for a jacket. A few days later, I saw her quietly stepping out of my younger brother Jake's room. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "Just opening the window." It was stuffy, but when I checked, both windows were closed tight. The room was just as stuffy as before. I told Dad again. This time he sighed. "I know you don't like her. I get it. But be patient." I began to feel helpless, until one night I came home early without telling anyone. I crept upstairs. The house was quiet, until I heard my youngest brother Scotty scream from the kitchen. Not a normal cry. It was a scream of pure terror. Then I heard Kathy's voice. "Shut up, you little shit." I ran downstairs, stunned. Kathy was standing there, and for the first time, she wasn't smiling. That night, Dad said he'd talk to her. I don't know how the conversation went, but in the middle of the night, I woke up with the strange feeling that someone was watching me. When I opened my eyes, I saw a shadow quietly slipping out of my room. I ran to the hallway and saw my father's bedroom door just closing. I pushed it open. Kathy was lying beside him, eyes closed, as if she'd never left the bed. I told Dad. She just smiled and softly asked, "Were you dreaming, sweetheart?" I don't know if I was dreaming, but I do know this. No one smiles like that after sneaking out of someone else's room at night unless they've got something to hide. Story 3. The Voice from the Basement. I was working on my history paper when I heard my mom call from downstairs. "Sweetie," I called back, but there was no response. A few minutes later, the voice came again. "Sweetie, come down. I need your help." The voice echoed up from the basement, calm, familiar, unmistakable. I got up, annoyed by the interruption. But as I approached the basement door, something felt wrong. The lights were off. No movement. I called out, "Mom, what are you doing down there?" Again the voice, "Sweetie." Exactly the same as before. Same words, same tone, same speed. I flipped the light switch. It flickered 3 times before turning on. I stepped down. No one was there. Only the storage room door at the end of the basement, cracked open. The darkness inside was pitch black. A sliver of light revealed something on the floor, a handkerchief embroidered with my name, the kind my mom uses, covered in dust and faint blood stains. I ran, locked the basement door, called my mom immediately. She was at the supermarket. I still don't know who or what called me. Story 4. The Man Beneath the Balcony. That night I was sitting on my second-floor apartment balcony, laptop on my lap, mind drifting relaxed, until a voice rose from the darkness below. "Hey, you up there." I thought he was yelling at someone else. But then, "Yeah, you come down here. I've got something real cool to show you." I stood and looked down. A man with messy hair, a backwards cap, and a dirty tank top. He held something long and thin, maybe a knife. I stepped back and locked the balcony door. But 5 minutes later, my front door began to shake violently. He'd found his way up, pounding. Then the sound of scraping, slow, jagged, like a knife carving into wood. Finally, he screamed one last time, "You're too late." The next morning, the police came. My front door had 7 deep knife marks, and under the lock, scratched with a fingernail, was a message: "I'll come back when you forget to lock up." Story 5. The Voice in the Night Forest. I was lying in the back of my Jeep, camping alone in the red feather woods of Colorado. No one around, no lights, only the chirping of insects, and an eerie sense of isolation. Near midnight, I heard laughter, high-pitched, faint, like someone wanted me to hear. Then a voice called out, "I see you." I couldn't move. I lay frozen, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then bang, something slammed against the back window. I shot up, scrambled to the driver's seat, and started the engine. My headlights flicked on and illuminated a nearby tree with a smiley face carved into the bark. I didn't stop driving until I reached the nearest motel. The next morning, I checked my dash cam. There was nothing outside, but the last sound captured in the recording was breathing, coming from inside the car. Some fears don't come from faraway places. They live inside the house you sleep in, the person you love, or the room you thought was the safest. You've just listened to 5 chilling stories, and maybe now you're wondering, have you ever brushed past something terrifying without even realizing it? Leave a comment if you've experienced something strange. And if you think you're still safe, just remember tonight, make sure your doors are locked. Thank you for listening. See you again in the sleepless nights to come.